I was staring at my own ideas with someone else's name on them when I realized they were trying to erase me from my own company. There it was on the conference room screen, my digital transformation proposal for lines 3 and 4, complete with my specific equipment upgrade schedule and efficiency targets. Every detail I'd spent 8 months developing, but the name on the cover slide read Alex Rodriguez, MBA Strategic Operations Initiative. My name is Roy Mitchell. I'm 48 years old, and until that moment, I thought I understood how the game was played at Apex Steel Manufacturing. This all started 3 weeks earlier when Alex Rodriguez swept into my workspace with his entourage of executives trailing behind him like obedient ducklings. 27 years old with an MBA from Wharton still warm from the printer, while I'd spent 26 years building this steel manufacturing operation from the ground up. "Everyone, I'd like to introduce Roy," he announced, gesturing toward me as if presenting an outdated piece of machinery. "He'll be handling our legacy operations while I modernize our efficiency protocols." The room went silent. Nobody looked at me. Not Paul Graham from the floor, not Danny Foster from quality control, not even Rita Bell, who'd shared coffee with me every morning for 15 years. They studied their boots, clipboards, anything but my face. "We need lean manufacturing principles to compete globally," our CEO Charlie Weber said, his hand on Alex's shoulder. "Roy can help you understand our history while you lead us into the future." I was being turned into history while still breathing. "The corner office will be yours," Alex told me, pointing to a cramped space near the parts storage. "I need the main office cleared by lunch, my office." My space that had witnessed countless equipment breakdowns solved at 2 a.m. safety protocols that had prevented God knows how many accidents. The wall still displayed the safety award from our 1,847 days, without a lost time incident, a record I'd helped build through sleepless nights and careful attention to every detail that mattered. "Understood," I replied, my voice steadier than my hands. 3 hours later, I watched maintenance workers carry my achievement plaques in a cardboard box while Alex directed the installation of digital monitors displaying real-time productivity metrics on my former walls. "The old desk goes too," he instructed them. "It's positively ancient." The desk my crew had built me from leftover steel after we hit our first million-ton production milestone. Solid construction built to last, unlike the particle board replacement they wheeled in. My new workspace had a folding chair and a computer that wheezed when starting up. I'd started at Apex Steel straight out of technical college, back when we occupied one building and employed 200 people. That was 1998, when Charlie Weber was still a floor supervisor and knew every worker by name. We now had 3 facilities and 1,200 employees. I'd personally overseen the construction of 2 of those facilities, worked 80-hour weeks during the expansion, missed family dinners, and my son's baseball games to make sure we met deadlines and stayed under budget. Back then, we were a family. When Hurricane Sandy knocked out power for 3 days, we kept the furnaces running with backup generators and manual controls. When the economy crashed in 2008, we took pay cuts across the board rather than lay anyone off. When Paul Graham's wife got diagnosed with leukemia, the whole crew pooled money for his medical bills without being asked, but that was before the merger. Before the consultants and efficiency experts, before people like Alex Rodriguez saw our operation as numbers on a spreadsheet instead of lives and livelihoods built over decades. My phone rang, jolting me back to the present. Danny Foster, my shift supervisor for 12 years and one of the smartest troubleshooters I'd ever worked with. "Roy, I'm sorry, but Alex has called a production meeting in conference room B. Right now," he said. "It's just for department heads." I was being excluded from a meeting about my own operation. "No problem," I lied. After hanging up, I noticed an email from Alex to the entire facility. Subject line: Efficiency optimization moving forward. The body was full of buzzwords: lean manufacturing, waste reduction, implementation of Industry 4.0 standards. Attached was a 22-page presentation. I opened it and felt my breath catch. These weren't just similar ideas to what I'd proposed 8 months ago for our digital transformation initiative. These were my exact proposals, down to the specific equipment configurations and timeline for implementation. The same proposals Charlie had deemed too expensive and disruptive when I presented them. But there was something else in Alex's presentation that made my blood run cold. Buried in slide 18 was a workforce reduction plan, 8 ET positions to be optimized over the next 6 months. These weren't just numbers to me. These were people I knew. Families I'd watched grow up, kids I'd seen graduate high school and come work alongside their fathers and grandfathers. Maria Santos, our lead process engineer, whose father had worked here for 30 years before retiring. She was brilliant with stress calculations, but Alex would see her as redundant because we had newer engineers with fancier degrees. Paul Graham, who knew our equipment better than anyone but didn't have the computer skills the new systems would require. Danny Foster, whose loyalty and problem-solving abilities couldn't be quantified in Alex's efficiency metrics. I sat back in my squeaking chair, staring at the screen. This wasn't just about my career anymore. This was about destroying something that had taken generations to build. A sticky note appeared on my desk at 4:30, my office. 5 p.m. sharp. Alex, I found him leaning against my old desk, his desk now, typing on his laptop with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. "Sit," he said without looking up. I remained standing. Some habits die hard. He finally glanced up from his laptop, studying me with the calculating look of someone sizing up an obstacle to be removed. "Your operational efficiency proposal was well received in the executive meeting today," he said, his tone suggesting he was doing me a favor by mentioning it. "You mean my operational efficiency proposal?" His smile didn't waver. "Your research was useful groundwork, certainly, but groundwork isn't architecture, Roy. I've modernized and elevated your basic concepts into something actionable." I kept my voice level. "You copied my work word for word in some sections." "That's a serious accusation," he replied, closing his laptop with deliberate precision, especially from someone in your position, my position. People who've been at one company too long often grow territorial, change-resistant. The business world has evolved significantly since you started here. Charlie understands this transition might be difficult for you. The condescension was thick enough to cut with a plasma torch. But what really got to me was the casual way he dismissed 26 years of experience as if it were a character flaw. "Is that why you excluded me from my own production meeting today?" He sighed theatrically, like a patient teacher dealing with a slow student. I needed candid feedback about operational leadership. People aren't always comfortable speaking honestly with their former supervisor present. The implication hit like a physical punch. He'd been gathering complaints about me, turning my own crew against me. "We're restructuring the department next month," he continued. "Some positions will be eliminated, others will evolve. Your future here depends entirely on your ability to adapt to new methodologies." The threat was unmistakable, but it was the casual mention of eliminated positions that made my jaw clench. Those weren't positions to him, they were people. Real people with mortgages and kids in college and medical bills. "Is there anything else?" I asked quietly. "Yes, the Brennan Steel presentation tomorrow. I'll be handling it personally." Brennan Steel. George Brennan had been buying from us for 18 years. His company had grown alongside ours, built on relationships and trust that couldn't be quantified in a spreadsheet. George specifically asked for me to present. I spoke with George this morning. He understands the new direction we're taking. Sometimes fresh perspective is exactly what long-standing relationships need. He was systematically stripping away everything I'd built. My role, my relationships, my reputation. All the connections that made this job more than just a paycheck were being severed, one by one. "That's all," he said, turning his attention back to his laptop screen. I walked out, passing the glass-walled conference room, where my department heads still sat in their meeting. Through the windows, I could see Alex's presentation displayed on the wall monitor. Minus, slides full of efficiency metrics and cost reduction targets. Danny caught my eye for a split second before looking away. The guilt on his face told me everything I needed to know. Whatever Alex had told them in there had changed something fundamental. Back at my cramped desk, a new email notification appeared. Subject: Performance Improvement Plan. Confidential. My stomach dropped as I opened it. A formal PIP, the first step toward termination. The document listed resistance to new methodologies, territorial behavior regarding operational changes, and difficulty adapting to evolving leadership structures. Classic HR language designed to create a paper trail. I'd given 26 years to this company. Worked through Hurricane Sandy when the power was out for 3 days, keeping critical systems running on backup power and pure determination. Skipped my father's 75th birthday to handle the emergency repair on Line 2 that saved us $2 million in downtime. Spent countless nights troubleshooting equipment failures that could have shut down operations for weeks. Now I was being pushed out by someone whose entire strategy was built on work I'd already done. I shut down my wheezing computer, gathered my things, and left without saying goodbye to anyone. In my pickup truck, I sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes. staring at the loading dock where I'd started as a floor supervisor back in 1998. The same dock where I'd learned that steel manufacturing wasn't just about metallurgy and heat treatment. It was about people working together to create something solid and lasting. A strange calm settled over me, replacing the initial shock and anger. They thought they were watching a man being gradually erased from his own company. They expected emotional outbursts, desperate appeals to upper management, maybe a resignation letter filled with bitter accusations. They had no idea who they were dealing with that night. I didn't call my wife Sarah to vent about my day. I didn't crack open a beer and complain to my neighbor about company politics. Instead, I went to my home office and opened my personal laptop. Not to update my resume or draft a complaint to HR, but to begin something that would change everything. See, I'd been at Apex Steel since before everything went digital. I remembered when we kept paper records, when institutional knowledge lived in filing cabinets and in the minds of experienced workers. But I'd also adapted to the computer age, backing up everything important because I'd learned that companies could lose decades of knowledge when people retired or moved on. My external hard drive contained 20 years of safety reports, maintenance logs, efficiency studies, correspondence with vendors and customers, and detailed documentation of every major project and improvement initiative. Not because I was paranoid, but because I believed in protecting institutional knowledge, information that could be lost if something happened to me. What I found as I searched through those archives made my hands shake. I worked through the night, cross-referencing dates and details following connections I'd never noticed before. By dawn, I had compiled something that would have made an investigative journalist proud. As I saved the final file, I realized Alex Rodriguez had made a critical mistake. He assumed my power came from my title, my office, my direct reports. He thought that by taking those away, he'd neutralized any threat I might pose. But my real power had never been organizational. It came from 26 years of paying attention, of building relationships based on trust rather than authority, of understanding how our operation functioned at every level. That was knowledge no org chart could capture or MBA could replicate. The next morning, I arrived at work before the first shift started. The facility was quiet, except for the hum of equipment on standby and the distant clatter of the overnight maintenance crew finishing their rounds. I made my way to the executive wing, where Alex's office door stood open. I placed a single manila folder on his desk with a simple note clipped to the front. For your review, historical safety protocols and outcomes analysis. Thought you might find the patterns interesting. Roy. Then I left for my 8 a.m. equipment inspection, one of the few duties still officially on my schedule. When I returned at 10:30, the atmosphere in the facility had changed completely. People huddled in small groups near the break areas, conversations stopping abruptly when they saw me approaching. There was an electric tension in the air, the kind you feel before a thunderstorm hits. Rita Bell hurried over to me, her eyes wide with something between excitement and fear. Roy, what did you do? I shared some historical context, I replied calmly. Alex went running into Charlie's office about an hour ago, then security showed up. They're all in the executive conference room now. Now, Charlie, the legal team, even some people I don't recognize. I nodded and headed toward my cramped workspace, as if nothing unusual was happening. Aren't you worried? Rita called after me. I turned back to her with the first genuine smile I'd managed in weeks. No, Rita, for the first time in a long time, I'm not worried at all. At noon, an email arrived from Charlie's assistant that made my pulse quicken. Meeting requested. Executive conference room. Immediate. The walk to the executive floor felt like stepping into a different world. Word had spread throughout the facility that something big was happening. Eyes followed me from every workstation, some curious, others fearful. The tension was so thick you could taste the metal dust floating in the air. I found Charlie seated at the head of the mahogany conference table, flanked by our legal counsel Jack Turner and HR Director Betty Carson. Two men in expensive suits I didn't recognize sat off to the side, likely from the parent company that had acquired us in the merger. Alex was nowhere to be seen. Sit down, Roy, Charlie said, his expression unreadable, but his voice carrying a weight I'd never heard before. I chose a seat directly across from him, placing my hands calmly on the polished table surface. After 26 years, I knew Charlie well enough to read the stress lines around his eyes. The file you left for Alex, he began carefully. Where exactly did you get that information? From our company safety archives, I replied, keeping my voice steady. Plus publicly available OSHA records and industry databases. Jack Turner, our legal counsel who'd been with the company almost as long as I had, leaned forward. His usual friendly demeanor had been replaced by the focused intensity of a lawyer who'd just walked into a potential lawsuit. "Roy, you've made extremely serious allegations in that file." "I haven't made allegations," I corrected him. "I simply compiled data and documented patterns." The conclusions speak for themselves. Charlie rubbed his temples like he was fighting off a headache. "You're claiming Alex deliberately implemented safety shortcuts at his previous facility that led to worker injuries, and now he's planning to replicate those same cost-cutting measures here." "The data supports that conclusion, yes." One of the suited strangers spoke up. "Mr. Mitchell, that's an extraordinary accusation. Why would anyone deliberately compromise worker safety?" I met his gaze steadily. 6 months before his previous facility was cited for multiple OSHA violations, Alex Rodriguez received a substantial consulting payment from an efficiency consulting group called Operational Excellence Associates. That same group later helped his company justify massive layoffs following the safety incidents that resulted from the shortcuts he'd implemented. I paused, letting that sink in. The interesting part is that Operational Excellence Associates is owned by a subsidiary of Meridian Industrial Partners, the same investment group that advised our board during the merger and now holds a 30% stake in Apex Steel. The silence that fell over the room was deafening. Charlie's face had gone pale, and Jack Turner was frantically taking notes. "You understand what you're implying," Charlie said quietly. "I'm not implying anything. I'm showing you numbers, dates, and financial transactions that exist on public record. Alex isn't just some ambitious young executive who got in over his head. He's a placed asset, systematically weakening our operation from the inside." Betty Carson finally found her voice. "Roy, Alex claims you're retaliating because of the performance improvement plan. He says you fabricated this conspiracy theory because you couldn't accept the changes he was implementing." I opened the laptop I'd brought with me. "Would you like to see the original OSHA reports, the safety violation records, the financial filings that show the consulting payments? I've indexed everything by date and cross-referenced it with the timeline of safety protocol changes at his previous facility." Charlie's phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at it, his expression growing even more troubled, then stood abruptly. "Everyone wait here. I need to make some calls." When the door closed behind him and the two corporate representatives, the atmosphere in the room shifted. Jack Turner looked at me with something approaching admiration. "Roy, in 20 years of corporate law, I've never seen documentation this thorough. Where did you learn to investigate like this?" "I didn't investigate anything," I replied. "I just paid attention. When you've been around long enough, you start to notice patterns. The safety violations at his previous company, 3 serious injuries, including one that resulted in permanent disability. The timeline matches exactly with the efficiency measures Alex was pushing there." Betty leaned forward. "But Roy, his credentials are impeccable. Wharton MBA, glowing recommendations from previous employers. Those recommendations came from executives who were fired 6 months after the safety incidents came to light. And his Wharton thesis was on optimizing manufacturing efficiency through strategic resource allocations, which is essentially an academic framework for cutting safety corners without triggering immediate regulatory scrutiny." 30 minutes passed before Charlie returned, accompanied by a stern woman in her 50s who introduced herself as Linda Hayes, chairperson of the Corporate Safety Oversight Committee. "Mr. Mitchell," she said without preamble, "we've been reviewing your file. Alex Rodriguez has been suspended pending a full investigation." I nodded, feeling no satisfaction in being right about something so dangerous. "However," Linda continued, "his legal team has submitted a counterfiling claiming you've misrepresented data to create a false narrative due to personal animosity. They're also questioning how you obtained some of this information. Everything in that file came from publicly available sources or our own company records," I replied. "I can provide the source documentation for every claim. They're also alleging that you've been undermining his authority from day one, poisoning staff opinions, and engaging in what they call institutional sabotage." Jack Turner interrupted. "Linda, with respect, Roy's been here for 26 years with an exemplary record. Alex has been here for 3 weeks, which is exactly why his legal team is claiming this is retaliation for the performance improvement plan," Linda replied. "They've offered to drop any potential legal action if Roy retracts his claims and resigns immediately." She slid a document across the table, a resignation letter already prepared, offering a generous severance package in exchange for my silence. The room went quiet, all eyes on me. I could feel the weight of 26 years pressing down, all the relationships I'd built, all the knowledge I'd accumulated, all the loyalty I'd shown. And they were asking me to walk away, as if none of it mattered. I picked up the resignation letter, scanning the legal language that would essentially erase me from the company's memory. Then I looked up at the faces around the table, people I'd worked alongside for decades, watching them wait for me to take the easy way out. "This is very thorough," I said finally. "Must have taken their legal team hours to prepare." Linda nodded. "They want this resolved quickly and quietly." I placed the letter back on the table. "Then they're going to be disappointed." "Roy," Charlie said softly, "you need to understand the position this puts the company in. The parent corporation is threatening to pull funding if this becomes a public issue." "I understand perfectly," I replied. "They're threatening to destroy what we've built here unless I disappear quietly. But here's what they don't understand. This isn't about me anymore." I stood up and walked to the door. "I have one more piece of information to share. But first, I need to bring in someone who can verify everything I've told you." "Who?" Linda asked suspiciously. I opened the conference room door to reveal a man in his 50s wearing a visitor badge, someone I'd asked to come in case this moment arrived. "This is Harold Stone," I said as he entered the room, former safety director at Alex's previous facility, the one who was fired for raising concerns about the protocol changes Alex was implementing. The room erupted in surprised murmurs, but I wasn't done yet. "Harold has been documenting Alex's pattern for the past 2 years, tracking his movement between companies and the safety incidents that followed. We're not the first target, and if we don't stop this here, we won't be the last." Linda Hayes was furiously taking notes. "Mr. Stone, are you prepared to make a formal statement?" Harold nodded grimly. "I've been waiting 2 years for someone to finally listen." The investigation that followed lasted 3 weeks, and it unraveled something bigger than any of us had imagined. Harold Stone's testimony revealed a network of planted executives across multiple manufacturing companies, all working to systematically weaken operations from within. Alex wasn't just one bad actor. He was part of an elaborate corporate espionage scheme designed to make healthy companies appear inefficient and ripe for acquisition at reduced prices. The Efficiency Consulting Group, Operational Excellence Associates, was the key. They would place their people in target companies, implement cost-cutting measures that looked good on short-term financial reports, but created serious long-term problems. Safety violations, equipment failures, worker injuries, all of it designed to drive down company valuations while providing legal cover through consulting agreements. When the dust settled, Alex was facing federal charges for corporate espionage and conspiracy to commit fraud. 3 other efficiency experts at companies throughout the Midwest were arrested in coordinated raids. The parent company that had acquired us through the merger was revealed to be a shell corporation controlled by Meridian Industrial Partners, whose business model apparently involved acquiring distressed manufacturing assets at below-market prices. But here's the thing about justice in corporate America. It's complicated. The investigation cleared my name completely. Charlie reinstated me with full authority over operations, and there was even talk of promoting me to senior vice president. The board offered me a substantial raise and a formal apology. Harold Stone was hired as our new director of safety compliance, and we immediately began reversing all of Alex's efficiency protocols. I should have felt vindicated, triumphant, even. But sitting in my restored office, looking at the safety award back on the wall where it belonged, I realized something had fundamentally changed. The experience had shown me how quickly 26 years of trust and respect could be swept aside by someone with the right credentials and the right buzzwords. How easily good people could be turned against each other when they were scared for their jobs. How institutional knowledge, the kind you can only gain through decades of experience, was valued less than a fresh MBA and a PowerPoint presentation full of industry jargon. Danny Foster knocked on my door one afternoon, about a month after Alex's arrest. He looked older than his 45 years, the stress of the past few months etched in the lines around his eyes. "Roy, I need to apologize," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "What Alex told us in that meeting, I should have known better." "What did he tell you?" Danny looked uncomfortable. "He said you'd been making comments about the younger engineers, that you felt threatened by new technology. He played recordings of conversations taken out of context, made it sound like you were planning to sabotage his initiatives. And you believed him. For a while, yeah. I'm ashamed to admit it. But he was convincing. He made it seem like supporting him was the only way to keep our jobs secure." Danny shook his head. He knew exactly which buttons to push. I leaned back in my chair, studying my old friend. Danny, you've worked with me for 12 years. You know me better than that. I do. That's what makes this so hard to live with. Fear makes people do stupid things, Roy. When someone with an MBA and backing from corporate tells you that your job depends on their success, you start second-guessing everything you thought you knew. That conversation stuck with me for days. Danny wasn't the only one who'd been manipulated. Maria Santos had been told I was blocking her advancement opportunities. Paul Graham had been convinced I was undermining his authority with the floor crews. Rita Bell had been led to believe I was planning early retirement and trying to take people down with me. Alex had been systematic about it, identifying each person's insecurities and fears, then exploiting them with surgical precision. It was psychological warfare disguised as management consultation. 2 weeks later, I got a call that changed everything. George Brennan, from Brennan Steel, the client Alex had tried to steal from me. Roy, I have a proposition for you, he said. I'm expanding operations, opening a new facility in Ohio. I need someone to run it, someone with real experience, not just book learning. You interested? The offer was everything I could have wanted. More money, more responsibility, a chance to build something new from the ground up. Working for someone who valued experience over credentials. What about Apex? I asked. What about it? You've given them 26 years. Time to give yourself a chance. I thought about it for a week. Charlie had made it clear he wanted me to stay, even hinted at fast-tracking me for his position when he retired in a few years. The crew respected me more than ever. After seeing how I'd handled the Alex situation, the company was profitable and stable, but something had been broken that couldn't be completely repaired. The knowledge that my own colleagues had been so quick to believe the worst about me, even temporarily, was hard to forget. More than that, I realized I'd been thinking small for too long, playing it safe, building incrementally, protecting what we had instead of reaching for what we could become. On a Friday afternoon in late autumn, I walked into Charlie's office and handed him my resignation. Roy, don't do this, he said, scanning the letter. We need you here. The company needs you. The company will be fine, I replied. You've got good people. Harold will make sure safety stays a priority. Danny's ready for more responsibility. Maria's brilliant. Give her a chance to prove it. This is about the Alex situation, isn't it? I know we let you down. I shook my head. It's not about Alex. It's about me finally understanding that loyalty should flow both ways. You can't build something great by just protecting what you have. Sometimes you need to take risks. The farewell party they threw for me the following Friday was one of those moments you remember forever. The entire day shift showed up, plus a lot of people from other shifts who came in on their own time. Even workers who'd been suspicious of me during the Alex period were there, some with tears in their eyes as they thanked me for saving their jobs. Paul Graham stood up to make a speech. Roy taught us that experience isn't just about knowing how to do things, he said. It's about knowing why things matter. He didn't just protect our jobs, he protected who we are. As I drove away from Apex Steel for the last time, I thought about the lessons I'd learned, not just about corporate politics or the value of documentation, but about the kind of leader I wanted to be going forward. Experience without wisdom is just time served, but wisdom without the courage to act on it is just philosophical decoration. 6 months into my new job at Brennan Manufacturing, I'm building something I'm proud of, a facility where safety and efficiency work together instead of competing, where institutional knowledge is valued alongside innovation, where people know their experience matters. Sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destroying your enemies, it's building something better than anything they could have imagined. Alex Rodriguez is facing 15 years in federal prison. His network of Planet executives has been exposed and dismantled. Meridian Industrial Partners is under investigation by multiple federal agencies, but that's not my victory. My victory is the phone call I got last week from Maria Santos, telling me she'd been promoted to chief engineer at Apex, making her the youngest person ever to hold that position. My victory is the safety record we're building here in Ohio, 400 days, and counting without a single incident. My victory is knowing that 26 years of paying attention, of building relationships based on trust rather than fear, of valuing people over processes, wasn't wasted time. It was preparation for something bigger. In the end, experience doesn't just teach you how to solve problems. It teaches you how to recognize them before they become disasters. And sometimes, if you're patient enough and observant enough, It teaches you how to turn those problems into opportunities to build something better than what came before. Real power isn't about the title on your door or the size of your office. It's about the trust you've earned and the knowledge you've gathered by paying attention when others were just going through the motions. The difference between a career and a calling isn't how long you stay in one place, but whether you use your time to build something that matters or just collect paychecks while waiting for someone else to recognize your worth.